Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to the garden. Okay, so we've had a lot of stuff going on here in the yard. You've been watching the kind of updates and everything else, and you know that the Ranunculus, they've been blooming like crazy, and unfortunately, I mean, they're almost done. The weather has warmed up quite a bit here, and our last frost date has come and passed, so basically what I need to be doing right now is starting to think about warm season summer, tender annual flowering plants so that we can really get the most out of our garden space. So the kind of theme of this video is going to be our summer turnover, I guess is what I'm going to call it, because I know a lot of people ask about, what plants do I take out and what plants do I put in their place. So I figured I would go around the garden and show each of the spots and kind of talk about the turnover that's going to happen there. Okay, so to begin, we'll start, I guess, on this side of the hoop house. We have the Dianthus. They are currently growing. They're thinking about blooming. They're not blooming yet, but they are a biennial, so we grew them last year. They are blooming this year. When these are done blooming here in about 2 weeks is my best guess, I am going to take all of these Dianthus out of this flower bed and I am going to replace them with something else. Most likely it will be something that needs a very short growing season or shorter growing season because it is past my last frost date. So I might replace them with zinnias, or I might plant some celosias there. Probably going to plant celosia there if I'm going to be honest about this bed specifically. Or maybe even sunflowers. I don't really know yet. The same with wallflower, that little wallflower patch next to the Dianthus. Going to put something else there. The next bed over, we have the Bells of Ireland and we have the Lavaterra mixed in there. There's some weeds in there too. Just pretend like you don't see them, I guess. Those are going to be blooming in about maybe a month and a half if I had to take a good guess. So I'm going to need something even shorter there just to make sure that there's plenty of time. So I'll probably definitely put a variety of sunflower in there. Maybe one of the varieties that has a maturity of about 45 days. If I were to do that, I could probably get 2 successions of sunflowers in this same spot at 45 days to maturity each. So you see how it's important to take into account how long each plant has actually used in the bed and calculate how many days about are left in your growing season to see what you can put in there. I've already showed you guys this patch before. This was the patch that had the tulips in it, and it now has the Lesianthus in it. The Lesianthus got put into this bed specifically because Lesianthus need a kind of longer establishment period during cool weather to really grow and elongate and have good stem length and things like that. So the tulips came out very early. They came out in the middle of April, so I was able to get those Lesianthus in there as soon as possible, which was really, really good. And now they're starting to get established, and I'm fighting keeping the weeds out. That's just the story of how it goes. Moving on to the other side of the hoop house, which I've also already shown you. This was the anemone bed. This was the Anemone Coronaria bed that you guys already saw in the previous videos, or also in the How to Grow Anemones video. Those were finished very early. Those were finished, I'd say, around the first week of April. I pulled those out, and those were immediately replaced with my snapdragons. Now, these snapdragons, they had already been started in the hoop house with the winter sowing method, so they had a good start. And from experience, I know that these snapdragons are probably going to be finished blooming around the end of June. This means that I will have even more time yet again to plant something else. So likely I'm probably going to either plant sunflowers in this bed, or our rudbeckia, our annual rudbeckia, might go in this bed for a fall bloom. I think that would be really pretty for a fall bloom period. So even though we have this one bed, we're having 3 different crops in this one bed during one season. We had the early season anemones, they got finished. We had the snapdragons, which were a middle season bloomer, and we can finish it off with a late season bloomer, like maybe a sunflower or a rudbeckia, or maybe even a celosia if we try it like that. it is so important when you have a little space to go through and kind of think out, the timing of different plants. I'm very fortunate that I've been doing this for several years, so I have a pretty good grasp of what will work and what won't work. So it will take a little bit of trial and error. So don't get discouraged if it's your first time ever trying it. Also, okay, then we're moving into the hoop house. And the hoop house, we have this ranunculus here on this left side, and they're just about done. It's about the middle of May, second week of May, and they're just about finished. Yes, they're still blooming, but the quality of the blooms has gone down significantly. The flowers are much smaller. We're getting those kind of secondary blooms instead of our main blooms. And, they're starting to fall over a little bit from the wind and everything else, so it's time for them to come out. I would love to just leave these in place and let them come back every year and everything like that, but I can't do it, unfortunately. It's just, I have to put something here. So what's going to happen is all of these ranunculus are going to be taken out, and they are going to be replaced with dahlias. All of the dahlias that I've had pre-sprouting in these trays for about a month and a half now, they are finally going to be planted in here and get a home in the hoop house. In addition to the dahlia tubers that also need a home in the hoop house, we have about 50 Dahlia seedlings from our little seed starting dahlia experiment that we're doing this year, which I'm very, very excited about. They're growing very slow. I'm wondering if they're going to get any bigger. I'm kind of worried about them. They're very slow. But we have all of these seedlings that are going to go in this row as well. I only have one row of space for my dahlias this year, and I am going to cram them in there as tight as possible and use some trellis netting and really just hope for the best with the dahlias. Again, everything's a learning experience here in the yard. Down the middle of the hoop house row, we have ranunculus also, where these poles are, these supports for the hoop house. That is a very narrow planting space, but those are going to come out as well, and we are going to plant some gladiolas there. Gladiolas are a very fast kind of turnaround type of crop. So ideally we can actually either succession plant gladiolas and get 2 harvests of gladiolas, or we can plant gladiolas and then take those out again and kind of treat them as annuals again, which is not ideal. And we can plant sunflowers or zinnias down that row and get a quick crop of sunflowers and zinnias. So again, we're doing the three crops per season type thing with that little strip in the middle. We had ranunculus, then we had gladiolas, and then we had something else, whatever I'm going to put in there. Moving over to the right side of the hoop house, we have things like calendula and carnations and a lot of stuff that hasn't even bloomed yet. It's taken a little bit longer, which is kind of frustrating. But once that stuff does bloom, I'm going to yank it out as soon as I can and put yet another flower that grows very fast there. Again, maybe something like rudbeckia, or maybe some amaranth or zinnias or celosia, something that doesn't require as much time but will still bloom and produce just a beautiful flower for us to harvest for our cut flower garden. Around the garden we also have things like bulbs in different places, and that's gets more difficult to kind of plan your garden around when you have things like lilies or peonies or daffodils, especially things that I want to come back year after year that are, a little bit more expensive and a little bit more of an investment. So what I do is I do kind of plant around them. For example, I showed you the calla lily bed that's kind of interplanted with the daffodils. The daffodils are there right now, but by the time these calla lilies are blooming and up and out of the ground, those daffodils will have died back, and it'll be easier to get in there and kind of harvest the calla lilies and everything. We also have this larger planting of the daffodils, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go through there. I have a tray full of these lovely sunflower seedlings that I have started. These sunflowers are not day neutral, so they need a longer growing season. So I am going to plant these sunflowers in between the rows of daffodils, and hopefully they can grow up through the daffodils, and by the time they get large enough to bloom, you know, the daffodils foliage will have died back, and we'll have just a beautiful kind of stand of sunflowers standing there looking at us. We also have these feverfew beds, which will be done probably in mid-June. Those are even more places where we can put things like our day neutral sunflowers. Day neutral sunflowers are really flexible because their turnaround time is so quick, so I really do like them for cut flower production. Hopefully I've explained this pretty well. The main thing I want to accomplish right now is really focus on changing over the flower beds from spring flowers to summer flowers. So we will have a little bit of a kind of lull in the blooming, you know, in the middle of the season, just because that's just how it is. I don't have a lot of room for mid-season bloomers like scabiosas and things right now. So I do have a little bit of a waiting period, but overall, once I get everything changed out, it is definitely worth the effort and worth the wait. And that's about it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I am so appreciative. I really am. As always, be sure to leave a comment down below. I love to know what you guys think. Was it helpful? What experiences do you have? I'm always learning from the comments, which I really love. As always, if you're not a subscriber and you like this video, be sure to hit the little subscribe button, hit the little bell. The bell tells you whenever we make new videos. It's a great way to keep up with the channel and grow just our little gardening community here. As always, all the links to everything is down in the description below. Our link to Patreon and our YouTube memberships is there. It helps support the channel. It helps me pay for things like blog fees, and occasionally I get help with editing, which is really helpful because let's face it, I am not the most tech savvy person on the planet. But I am trying to keep learning and keep making our videos better. There's also a link to the blog. Oftentimes you can check out the blog and there will be more information and more pictures about the thing that I've talked about in the video, just because sometimes it helps for me to write down that information and kind of organize it much better. As always, feel free to share this video with a friend. It helps us so much when we grow the channel. I hope that you're having such an incredible day, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye, guys.